Hey guys, I'm Destiny. This is Monday Mail number 22. I had a horrible headache last night, so I'm not sure if this is going to be posted Monday night or Tuesday morning, but here we go. First question comes from Tehpolecat, and he asks, now that what.cd is dead, what's the next step? Our private trackers are never going to reach that level again. Do you think there will be something completely different to replace what.cd? I'm not interested in torrenting, but the community aspect sounds very interesting to me. Do you have any other go-to places to discuss music? I never really discussed music much on the sites. I usually just use them to download stuff, although obviously those forums existed for a lot of discussion if that was your thing. Although, again, I didn't participate in those communities too much, but, I mean, yeah, that exists. In terms of what will replace the private trackers, I mean, every time a big private tracker goes down, people always say, like, oh, this is the end of the world, nothing's going to replace it. Obviously, it happened once with Oink, and that was, what a lot of people consider to be an insurmountable loss. Waffles and What both pretty easily surpassed Oink, I think, both in scope and quality, and community even. But with What going down, obviously, it is the biggest loss of a music torrent private tracker of all time. I'm hoping that there will be a replacement coming soon. It kind of looks like there are, past the headphones, maybe. Xanax, a.k.a. Apollo, or whatever the fuck they decide to rename themselves to, is starting to look promising. And then Waffles maybe will or will not come back up. I don't know. I think I don't have very much regard for Waffles, though. Any tracker that can go offline for a month with no announcement or communication whatsoever, and then say that they're coming back and they were having financial issues. I'm not sure about Waffles, but regardless of all of that, I mean, the Gazelle code base or whatever, I guess, is public and it's out there and people can replicate it, and you've got a fuck ton of people sitting around with their entire collections of music where they're just waiting to dump this onto whatever torrent site decides to spring up again. I think that my guess would be like in a month or two, you'll probably see another site pop up that's comparable in quality to What. Comparable, maybe not quite the breadth, I think is what I'm looking for. Maybe that those ultra niche albums that you were looking for might not be there, but in terms of being superior to every single public tracker, it wouldn't surprise me if those private trackers were up in a month. There'd probably be a couple of them. It looks like there are, like, I don't know, like I said, it looks like No Stream is probably fucked. No Stream is probably fucked. The two that I hear the most about are going to be probably Past the Headphones and then Apollo.rip, which is currently called Xanax.rip, but I think they just voted on a name change. The second question is from Reformed, and he says, I posted this shit 2 weeks ago when you said all the questions were shitty, but I'll try one more time. Years ago, when you had that long talk with XJ9, I remember you said that you were just like him when you were younger. Personally, I found that really difficult to believe based on how you are now, so can you elaborate more on why you felt you two were so similar, preferably with examples? I really question how much he can improve in his mindset over the next several years, but if you had a similar transformation, I would be interested in hearing about it from a psychological perspective. I guess I feel like I've told this story a lot. I guess we'll get it documented in a Monday Mail. It's probably on my channel somewhere. But I grew up being very, very, very religious. Very religious. I went to Catholic grade school and then Catholic high school, or Jesuit high school, I guess, which is a kind of Catholic, right? Or, I mean, it is Catholic. When I say very religious, I mean, like, I'm the kind of person that would, like, say prayers in rooms when I was, like, in my early preteens or whatever, right? And I would, think that God is watching, and sometimes I would read stories out loud instead of to my head because I would think, like, Jesus is listening or whatever. Like, I was very fucking religious growing up. And I guess I'm not sure what sparked it. Maybe lack of parental supervision. Don't let my mom hear that because she'll hate herself for it. Maybe lack of parental supervision once my mom moved to Florida, which I think was when I was 14 or 15. And then me kind of moving more into a secular direction. Basically what happened was my entire life had been built around religion, right? And all of the reasons why we're good, all the reasons why we're bad, your purpose in life, all of these things have been, built around religion. And then I lost that when I was about 14, 15, 16 years old. In that time period, I became very a-religious, very atheist. And I guess in the process of that happening, it's a very strange time for a person, or at least for me, because I had to try to figure out what was the replacement for that. And I was dealing with a lot of other very strange things at the time. Empathy was something that was very hard for me at the time. I was very unempathetic. I don't want to use the word sociopathic because I think too many people are quick to say that, but like I had a very hard time, connecting with a lot of people. I had two very close friends, and that was pretty much it. But I was okay with that. I liked being on my own, just playing games and whatnot. And without religion is kind of like my core, fundamental guiding principle. I didn't really have much. So I spent a lot of time kind of drifting and searching and thinking about what I wanted to do in terms of philosophically with my life. I made a decision early on. This might sound really arrogant or ignorant. I'm not sure. I don't regret it now, though. I made a decision early on that I wouldn't go out of my way to read up on philosophy to pick out the best one because I was really worried. I don't know how I thought of this at the time, but I was really worried that I would read something. Oh, I know why I thought of this. I was really worried that I would read like one thing and then I would believe in it completely and stick with that. And the reason why I thought that is because when I was a freshman, sophomore in high school, I read first Anthem and then Atlas Shrugged, and I was hardcore into the objectivism. I think that probably played a little bit in ejecting the religious thoughts out of my head, right? But I remember that in a couple years after coming off of that huge binge, I remember thinking that I read Anthem and Atlas Shrugged, and I bought hardcore into the Ayn Rand philosophy, but was it because it was actually the best? Was it just because it was the first thing that I read, right? That really bothered me for a while. Like, I was thinking, like, fuck, like, maybe, what if people are just stupid, and the first fucking thing you read, you believe it wholeheartedly for the rest of your life? And I didn't want that to happen. I was really careful on that happening. So I decided I wasn't going to go and read on any philosophy to figure out what was the best. I was just going to do a lot of thinking and reflecting and whatever. And so I went through like a few kind of odd stages in my life. The first stage, I guess, in going from religion to being a-religious, it was I kind of thought that maybe nothing really had any intrinsic purpose to it whatsoever. Like, who the fuck cares about anything, right? Does anything really matter? If there isn't a God, there's no greater guiding purpose, then everything is just kind of whatever. So I guess I'm sure there are probably very specific terms for this. I'm sure that philosophers have identified all of these and have thought about these phases or these different mindsets in way more depth than I could have ever hoped to as a fucking teenager, right? But I drifted through that phase for a while. We're thinking that nothing really had any kind of purpose whatsoever, and that you should just be as selfish as possible and fuck everybody else because who really cares? Nobody's keeping tabs on you or anything. And then eventually I grew out of that into more of a thinking that, like, well, life is about being happy, and I want to be happy, so everybody should be happy because I want everybody to want me to be happy, and the only way I can expect other people to want me to be happy, so if I want them to be happy, and I kind of did that thing, right? And I'm sure that there were more individual thoughts along the way, but that was kind of like the rough arc that I had from nothing, or I'm sorry, from being religious to believing kind of in nothing into believing in this like personal happiness, self-fulfillment kind of thing, right? I think the problem that I ran into was when I became a-religious, I went to a Catholic school, okay? That means that there are a lot of people that are religious that are older than me, right? So I started to get a very, very, very negative view of adults in general and people in general, right? Because when you're a teenager, adults are humanity. Adults are what you aspire to become, an adult, right? Who has full agency of themselves. You can drive yourself around. You have your own thoughts. You're smarter than kids, right? So I developed this insanely narcissistic ego where if all these adults are wrong and I'm just a kid who has figured out that like God is fake and shit, and these guys are running around and they still fucking believe it, how stupid must they be, and how absolutely ingenious must I be that I'm only 16 years old and I figured out something that these guys have spent their entire lives believing, and I figured out that they were wrong about it, right? So these people must be idiots, right? So I had a very hard time trusting or taking into account anything that any adult said, and I thought that I was like so much fucking smarter, so much better in every single way than a lot of these people, not realizing that intelligence is a little bit more nuanced, not realizing that people have different thoughts for different reasons, right? Because I was just a fucking kid. What the fuck do I know, right? Every 16-year-old, well, I don't know. When I was 16, I had the world figured out and I knew everything about religion and all of that shit. And yeah, I don't know. I was an insanely narcissistic person. And since I also was in that kind of nothing means anything period of my life, I was kind of manipulative of the people around me as well, right? There's some very, very, very strange, a whole bunch of weird stories with like the relationship girl issues that I had growing up, and all of that was just like very, very, very bizarre. Just, I guess my approach to it was just so insanely manipulative and so self-fulfilling that I guess looking at that phase of my life, like I could see myself being XJ9-esque. Like I could definitely see myself having a conversation with an older me and coming off as XJ9. I think that, I think that it would have been the exact same mindset. I don't know what got me out of it. I don't know why I transitioned to that less nothingness into personal fulfillment. I'm not really sure. I don't know. I don't know. I guess I never really documented the growth of my mind or whatever. So I'm not really sure why I transitioned out of that, but hopefully XJ9 does eventually, although I'm not sure. One thing that I have said repeatedly is that I'm really glad that I didn't start streaming or gain a big following when I was in that mindset, because I guarantee that if I would have started streaming at 16, 17 and gained a following with that mindset, and I know I could have gained a following with that mindset too, because that kind of thought that you're better than everyone else is really attractive to people. If I would have gained a following in that mindset, I don't think I ever would have transitioned out, because I would have had relentless approval and relentless support for those fucked up thoughts. I would have never transitioned out of them. Although I guess I've transitioned out of being hardcore like right wing into pretty left leaning too. So I don't know, maybe I would have. Why do people change in the ways that they do? Why do people break in the ways that they do? And why do people overcome the things they do? I'm not really sure. These are really interesting questions, and I wish I had the answer for you. It really makes me wonder sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. But I think that kind of answers. I really question how much he can improve his mindset over the next several years. But if you had a similar transformation, it would be interesting. Yeah, I guess the only thing that worries me about XJ9 is the fact that he has an audience and he's got so many people affirming what he says. I guess like when I was growing up, going back to like everybody breaks in different ways and I don't understand why people do things. I was constantly challenged in every single thing that I thought growing up, always, because since I was an atheist in a religious school, I had lots of people that would always question the shit that I would say, and I would get into arguments and debates about everybody. And these are kind of how, like, I don't know, I feel like my personality and who I am has been forged through arguments and refining, my intellect or wit or thoughts or whatever the fuck you want to call it, right? I don't know if these same things could have happened if I wouldn't have met so much resistance growing up with the ideas that I had, right? One of the things that I really hate online today, this isn't directly related to the question, but one of the things that I hate about the internet today, it's one of the worst things of the internet, and I don't think people talk about it enough. People talk about how the internet is great because you can find anything on it. That's one of the reasons why the internet is horrible, because you can find anything on it. Any fucked up, stupid idea you have, you can find a community that will accept you, that will not question you, and that will encourage you, right? So if you have a bad thought, a thought that you should overcome, you'll never do it. Why would you overcome a thought when you can find a group online dedicated to accepting you for it and then encouraging it and fostering the growth of that said idea, right? How are you ever going to grow as a person when you have no reason to, right? And growing up, I guess maybe I was too young for Usenet groups or IRC or whatever. I guess I didn't spend too much time outside of like battle.net chats. I guess I never really had like groups of people to support me in any stage of my early mental development. Philosophically, I never ever had a person to talk to that would agree with me about anything ever. Everybody disagreed with my philosophy all the time. Nobody was ever there for me early on to affirm any of my thoughts or whatever, right? And it sounds, and again, I'm not trying to spin this as like it sounds really sad growing up you didn't have people to talk to. I consider this to be an immense positive, because it meant two things. One, every single time I had an idea, I had to find a way to rationally justify it, and two, it had to be upheld in argument against other people, right? So when I say rationally justify, what I meant was like whatever ideas I thought, I guess he's kind of playing this in thing, right? I had to have a good line of logic to get from here to here. Because if I couldn't, then how could I even move in a direction? Since I didn't have people to guide me or people to tell me what to think, right? I had to like kind of construct these things, moving on. And then as I constructed them, right, because my peers a lot of them were religious and none of them agreed with my philosophy, I would argue with people a lot. And in order for my philosophy to uphold, I would have to have good logic get there, because I'd have to be able to employ that logic in an argument against these people, right? And anytime I would have an argument, and I lost plenty of them, I would have to go back to the drawing board and reform or rethink. Like, well, maybe my philosophy's fucked. Maybe this isn't good. Maybe there is something I'm missing, right? And that process of shabbily putting together a philosophy, testing it in battle, right? And then the destruction of that, and then the rebuilding of that, I think kind of helped my development a lot early on. Like, those years were invaluable in shaping my mind, not in giving me a philosophy, because anybody can get a philosophy, but in giving me the tools to construct a philosophy. I think that cognitive thinking is so important, and being cognitive thinking, is there any other kind of thinking? When I say cognitive thinking, what I'm talking about is having the mental tools necessary to construct your own valid, rational thoughts without having to read them from a book. And I'm not saying that like everybody should be so fucking ingenious or smart, or that I'm so independent thinker, smart or whatever, but just that like if I have to form an idea on it, I have the tools in my head capable, as a lot of people do, right? well, maybe not. I don't know. I have the tools necessary to read something for my own independent opinion about it and then insert that into my worldview. I can do that. I have the capability of doing that. But a lot of people I've noticed sometimes can only read something and then they need other people to filter it for them. Like, okay, or some people even do it with me. Well, what is people joke about it in chat, but it's only half joking, right? Well, what does Destiny think about this thing, right? You read something like, oh, this happened with Richard Lewis, or this happened with Donald Trump, or this happened in Syria. Well, I don't know what to think about it. What does Destiny think about it? Tell me what to think about it. Or what does Breitbart think about it? Or what does the anchor on the Shep guy on Fox News think about it? Or what does Anderson Cooper think about it? Right? I don't actually I don't have because a lot of people don't have the necessary tools to form their own thoughts about something, to critically analyze and think about something. I think that's really important. And to go back again, the only reason why I think I'm capable of doing that is because all of my ideas were the result of a lot of debate and conversation with peers growing up, because it had to be that way. And I'm so incredibly thankful for that. It's like an invaluable experience in my life. I don't know how you would give that to other people. Like, I guess some people, I don't know what causes, because I guess some people would break down if they didn't have people to talk to or to share. I don't know how that works. For me, I guess it was just never that way. Maybe it's just a genetic thing. Maybe I got lucky. Maybe I watched the right anime or video games with the edgy protagonists that I wanted to be like, so I didn't think I needed a friend. I don't fucking know. I'm not sure. I really don't know. I wish I had a way to share that with other people. Maybe that's why Athena's trying so hard to share his fucking click shit with everybody. But yeah, I think that going through life, and it also gave me a lot of self-esteem and self-confidence, right? There's a reason why I'm probably, well, I guess I shouldn't say that. A lot of people have huge breakdowns about dealing with shit online, right? Total Biscuit has huge breakdowns. Sky Williams has had breakdowns. People having these horrible breakdowns dealing with fans. But I'm relatively okay. I mean, I'll argue with people on Twitter or Reddit sometimes, but I've never had a massive emotional breakdown. I've never cried to myself because of something that somebody said to me online. Not because I'm some awesome, amazing, super thick-skinned person, or whatever. I am pretty thick-skinned, but because I have the confidence to understand that as long as I can personally rationalize something to myself, and I think that logic can hold up in debate, then I feel comfortable about what I'm doing. And I don't think I would have ever developed that mindset had I not had so much opposition to every single idea I had growing up. Right. Question number 3 comes from ricercarfl. Destiny, for the past couple of weeks, I've been feeling like all I want to do is be alone and not have anything to do with other people. Have you been through a time like this before? What brought you away from being solitary and made you want to spend time with others again? Do you think it's damaging to think like this for such a long period of time? For me, I guess the way that I look at any behavior, I guess, is the same way that I guess psychologists look at behavior. I'm not a psychologist, right? Okay, so you can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but the way that psychology usually looks at disorders is if it has a negative impact on your normal life, or does it prevent you normally from functioning as a functional human being, right? Functioning as a functional human being. Is that tautology? So when I say that, let's look at something like video games. Okay, let's say that you've played video games for 6 hours a day. Is that too much? Well, you don't actually know the answer to that because you need more information. Do you skip work because you play video games? Do you skip out on meetings that you've agreed on beforehand with loved ones? Does your social life suffer? And when I say that, I mean you have friends that you no longer talk to that want to invite you to places that you want to hang out with, but instead you'd rather play video games or whatever, right? Are you unable to hold a job, or do you miss bills as a result of video games, right? The more of these kinds of boxes that you check off, the more likely it is that whatever you're dealing with is some disorder that probably needs to be corrected. Whereas if it's something like I don't want to say that I'm antisocial because I like talking to people, but I also really, really value my alone time. I like going to events and hanging out with people and talking to people and joking and laughing and all of that, but I really value my alone time. That's why I would drive to events so often, because I like to be able to drive away after, I'm done playing my games or whatever. I like to be able to drive away and be on my own and not have to hang out with people constantly. When I go to events, I always have to have my own hotel room. I don't know if I can handle sharing a hotel room. I just like being on my own a lot. I really value my alone time. I guess, but that being said, right, I still am able to hold down my job. I still pay all my bills on time. I can go out and function socially. I have relationships. Well, right now only one. I try to have only one at a time. I try. And then I think that for the most part, I'm a decently adjusted person, right? If you find that you're alone all the time, but you're happy being alone and that's fine for you, then I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. If you can still talk to other people, you have a job, you know, you take care of your responsibilities, there's nothing wrong with being alone. Now, if you find that you're miserable and you really want company or something, then at that point, I think that something has to be addressed. In terms of what, I don't know. I guess it would vary from person to person. Why are you so antisocial? What are your problems? Like, I don't know. I can't really diagnose you with anything or give you more specific advice than that. I mean, I don't know, maybe talk to a therapist or a counselor, somebody, if you feel like you have these problems, and they can help talk you through it, and they can give you the mental tools necessary to, you know, combat these negative kinds of thoughts, or give you the tools necessary to build relationships with other people and whatnot. But yeah, that's all we got for today. Those are the 3 questions. I'll post a link to the next ones in the info box below. I love you guys. It's been fun. I think we're playing Final Fantasy 15 this week. I'm either starting that tomorrow or today, depending on if this video gets posted soon or tomorrow. Yeah, that's all I got. I'll see you guys later. Peace out.